I think it does it for the online questions, but if folks have, sure.
We're hearing from some parents who are curious about the phased reopen of the economy and childcare for kids who are too old for daycare but too young to be by themselves. What's going to happen for those families who've got those, 8 to 11-year-olds who can't stay home by themselves when the parents have to go back to work at some point?
So the question is really about a lot of the kids that are too old for childcare but too young to stay by themselves. I'm going to take a step back and give you a bigger answer. One of my biggest concerns, what we're dealing with now and trying to plan for the future, not just in terms of how we open schools and what that looks like, is that with all the success we've had of remote learning, there's a lot of kids falling through the cracks. There just are. Less in New Hampshire probably than any other state, but one is too many. All right? It's one of those issues where you just say one is too many. And so maybe it's the certain special ed services. We have a lot out there, but there are certain districts that are having trouble doing that. And that's understandable. Remote learning is a very different setup. Sometimes it requires a parent bringing a child into a facility, and maybe that parent is working, and so that child can't get those services as, they might be being provided, but, we can't physically get there. Sometimes those services translate online or over, a Skype, maybe. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes, especially for occupational therapy, the OTs and the physical therapists that are often required for a lot of those services. My fear is that you have a lot of kids falling through the cracks. Combined with that is the issues of mental health. Kids have done an amazing job over the past 2 months dealing with remote learning, but it is stressful. And I can already see, not just, it isn't my family per se, but I've heard a lot of stories out there of parents contacting me in different school districts all across the state. They've worked hard, they're right there, but it is exhausting. And I think there's a lot of frustration because the kids want to go back to school. They want to integrate with their friends. When you take out that social aspect that a child really needs often to thrive, it really creates a gap in the ability of the child sometimes to focus, to get certain things done, to follow all the way through, to expect a child to go through the 6 hours of traditional learning that they get in a classroom and just let it translate into the kitchen table is incredibly difficult. It creates a stress for families, and you get different levels of mental health issues on that spectrum of anxiety, of stress, of frustration. And then you compound it with economic issues onto a family. And then you compound it with a lack of social interaction for that child. And then you compound it with just the natural anxiety of this massive pandemic where, people are getting sick and they're dying. That's a huge stress on our entire system. And the kids the people that I think face the brunt of it the most, not just on the physical side of the pandemic, but on the mental side are the kids. Now you add into the segment you're talking about, those kids that are too old for childcare, really too young to stay by themselves. And again, you're finding another huge gap of kids. You're talking many thousands of children in the state that fall in that demographic that are sometimes home alone when they probably shouldn't be or have trouble doing so, or they're going to work with their parents if the parents are bringing them to work and trying to do online learning while their parents are at the office or something like that, for those who are going to work right now. There's so many strains on the system. I think what we're going to find, unfortunately, is that over the summer, let me add one more problem to the whole mix. Now you have a lot of kids who rely on summer programs. Maybe there's summer camps, the Boys and Girls Club programs. How do you actually implement those without getting massive transmissivity of the virus? Now you add the summer school programs, which a lot will go to remote learning. But again, now you're asking kids to be in a remote learning atmosphere from April all the way through to September. I mean, that's a big ask for a child to take on, and as a parent to manage that. So the compounding effects of all of this are absolutely huge. I think we're going to find as we go through the summer and into August that there's a lot of these gaps, there's a lot of need for services, and that's why I talk about the sacred cows. If we have to make tight budget cuts or certain constraints or delay certain funding on certain programs, I can tell you what, it won't be for kids programs. If anything, we're going to boost those up because we have to recognize that it isn't just about the end dollar to the state. It's about providing services and making sure that these kids don't continually fall through the cracks and we create more long-term problems for them and their families. So I can tell you it is the utmost concern. And then you add the child abuse issues, and then you add the domestic violence issues on top of it. I mean, we keep going down a path, and this has really compounded itself. A lot of people will tell you that when you add all that up, you've heard that term, is the cure worse than the disease? Well, no. I mean, this pandemic is real. People are dying very drastically from it. But the indirect effects of what's happening, and a lot of times communities and families won't even realize it. If it's not happening in your house, you're not maybe seeing it, but it's real and it's out there and it's happening to thousands of kids across the state. So it's something that we're going to stay very vigilant on. It's why I talk so much about CASA, why I talk about trying to get certain programs up. We're talking, we've been able to maintain a lot of our child care centers, maybe about a third or more of them, with the additional stimulus dollars we've put into the system. But we need more, frankly. We need to expand their opportunities. We've allowed businesses to create their own child care programs within their business entities, so kids can come to work, to give parents a little more flexibility and a little more comfort that their kids aren't just going to be staying at home when they probably shouldn't be. But I can tell you it's going to be an absolute focus of us from a month ago. To the indefinite future, because this isn't something that gets solved with just money. Isn't something that just gets solved by allowing kids to go back to school. There's a lot of pieces of this puzzle that have to be put together to make sure that all of these kids that have fallen through the cracks are accounted for. And it's our job to make sure we account for everyone.